Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Kim and I'm really glad you're here. I wanted to talk today about this whole gig workers being classified as employees thing that's going on. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. The first article came out probably close to about a month ago, and I've been thinking about what angle to come at it from and how to get the information out there to those of you who may not be aware. And I decided I'm just going to talk about it as I see it, as I understand, and hopefully it will spur you to think about it and to, get your voice heard. If you don't agree with what's going on, step up and say something. If you want it to go through as they are planning, then just sit back and watch it happen, I guess. Anyways, before we get started, please don't forget to subscribe. This video is pretty important. The decisions that are going to be made will affect all gig workers. Grubhub, Doordash, Uber, Rover, Shipt, Instacart, and all the others. So this is really important. Let's get going here. So did you hear what the U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh said? So about a month ago, on April 2nd, he spoke during a news conference at the White House, basically saying that gig workers should be treated as employees, either reclassified as employees or at least given employee benefits. He thinks that we all want to be employees. I don't know about you, but I do not want to be classified as an employee. I like being an independent contractor. I like the choice. Walsh suggested that if we were employees, we would be treated better. Is that the truth? I doubt it. I know a lot of companies do not treat their employees very well. Just because you're an employee versus an independent contractor does not guarantee anything. Here's a quote from him. He said, "These companies, Uber, Lyft, Doordash, etc., are making huge profits and revenue, and I'm not going to begrudge anyone for that because that's what we are about in America. But we also want to make sure that the success trickles down to the worker." Like I said, there's a lot of very successful companies out there, and the success does not trickle down to the employees. Some of them, but not all of them. It's estimated that 1/4 to 1/3 of the U.S. workforce is considered a contract or gig worker. Is this true? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure how they came up with the numbers. It seems like a low number to me. Regardless of the percentage, a huge portion of our population that are gig workers or contract employees means they have no employer benefits. But it also means they are free to work where they want, when they want, and accept the jobs they want for the money that they want. To me, this is a huge benefit. Like I said before, I have a full-time job. This is a side gig for me. So my outlook on this may be different than someone who's doing gig work full-time. But like I said, I'm not skewing this any way in particular. I'm just trying to put the information out there that I read. Anyways, what is a gig worker? Well, it's an independent contractor who performs on-demand services, delivery drivers, rideshare drivers, childcare, pet care, shoppers, etc. Here are some things that they say that we complain about. Maybe some people complain about these things, but from all the various Reddit posts, Facebook posts, and YouTube videos I watch, I rarely hear people complain about these things. They say gig workers complain about unfair working conditions, that we make less than minimum wage, there's a lack of health care benefit, exploitation. Do you think this is true? I don't know. I don't. I don't feel like I am working under unfair working conditions. If there's bad conditions, I don't have to work. No one's forcing us to do anything. Making less than minimum wage? Well, if someone makes less than minimum wage, they are doing it wrong. There's a way to make decent money, and I've showed how to do it in some of my videos. I make more than $30 an hour, sometimes $40 an hour. Tonight, I made way more than $40 an hour. So anyways, some employees make very low wages. There are so many minimum wage workers out there. in our country. And I think they're exploited and have more unfair working conditions than we do as independent contractors. Healthcare is an issue, yes, definitely. But even for some employed people, it's not always a guaranteed benefit of employment. Some smaller companies can't afford to give benefits to their employees. Some companies, you pay a big chunk of the benefit, and there are some companies that pay for the bulk of it. But, healthcare is definitely an issue. I agree with that. I live in California, and I, for one, am glad that Proposition 22 passed. I want the freedom to choose when, where, and how often I work. An independent contractor has the right to make those decisions. And this proposition basically allowed us to be considered independent contractors and not have to follow someone else's orders. We can do what we want. If we are reclassified as employees, I put Doordash in here, but it's all of these platforms. They could force us to take every delivery with or without tips. They could force drivers to work specific hours. They could mandate so many things. You would lose your freedom of choice. Even worse, they can pay dashers or whatever the delivery person is working for. When I was originally doing this, I was focusing on Doordash, but it really applies to all of them. So they could pay minimum wage, not give us the tips at all. We would not be able to decline offers or make any decisions ourselves. I don't think that anything will happen overnight, but if they reclassifying the gig workers as employees, and if it actually happens, I really believe it will be the end of many of these gig platforms. So you can bet they're going to put all the money into this fight as they can and try to find some legal reasons why this is wrong. This whole let's reclassify all gig workers as employees things that they're proposing. Benefits are expensive. It's in the gig platform's best interest to keep us as independent contractors because benefits will take a big chunk out of their profit. Healthcare benefits, sick leave, vacation pay, unemployment insurance, social security, etc. Those are all the typical employer paid benefits that right now they're not paying. These employee benefits are expensive to employers. It's estimated that an employee costs 20 to 30% more to an employer than a contract employee. So I can see why the platforms don't want us to be employees, but I also don't want to be considered an employee. I really don't. I have some updated information here. I found an article, and rather than trying to summarize it, I was going to kind of just scroll through it with you. Things are happening. It could take at least 90 days for any changes to be made, but it looks like things are going to change. If you want to read it yourself, pause this video, and here's the link. But basically, I'm going to open up this website. This is Reuters. Let me close all these other ones here and highlight, make this bigger. So, U.S. Labor Secretary's next move on gig workers likely to include company probes. So basically it says U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh moved this week to block a rule making it easier to classify gig workers as independent contractors. It's just a first step in what is likely going to be a long battle over how to delineate the rights of America's growing gig army. The rule by former President Trump's administration, which was supposed to go into effect in March, would have hampered the ability of workers at companies like Uber and Lyft to demand benefits like overtime pay. The Labor Department, under Walsh's leadership, is now likely to investigate how the pay and benefits gig workers receive stand up against the federal law protecting American workers. The Fair Labor Standards Act, labor lawyers, unions, and former policymakers said. Walsh, himself a former union member, told Reuters he thinks a lot of U.S. gig workers in the country deserve employee benefits, and that his department would have conversations in the coming months with companies that employ them. I'm not sure why I'm saying all these rings. These companies are making profits and revenue. I'm not going to begrudge anyone. So this is the old part stuff. So let's see. Department's roadmap is likely to start with announcing its intent to look at worker misclassification and then using probes to build the case for a ruling that supports protection for workers. This is a very important paragraph right here. Any ruling would have to be reviewed by the White House and subject to a public comment period, which could take as long as 90 days. If the department issues a ruling, millions of gig workers could become eligible for benefits like overtime and a minimum wage. That would almost certainly be the beginning of a battle in Washington, as well as state legislatures and courtrooms across the country. Walsh's position is reinforced by the FLSA as it currently stands, blah, 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 with a focus on labor markets and the gig economy. The companies are really pushing to change the contours of employment law, saying workers want flexibility and this is the only way they can get it. If employment law were to be applied to these gig workers, they would be found to be misclassified. Companies like Uber argue that the current system defining employment and a worker's relationship to a company is outdated. It forces a binary choice upon workers to either be an employee with more benefits but less flexibility, or an independent contractor with more flexibility but limited protections. Uber believes that we can combine the best of both worlds. That's what this guy said. Uber, Lyft, and Postmates declined comment on this story. Grubhub did not respond to requests for comment. The Department of Labor also declined comment. There's a battle ahead. The exact number of gig workers in the United States varies widely. In 2017, the most recent government data available, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated that 21.4 million out of the 331 million strong population had contingent or alternative jobs as their sole or main employment, including on-call and temporary workers as well as contractors. Despite setbacks in Europe, gig economy companies like Uber, Lyft, and Doordash and Instacart have been successful in maintaining their workers' status as independent contractors in the United States, albeit with additional benefits. The companies scored a decisive win in California in November when voters in the Democratic-leaning state supported a company-sponsored ballot measure overriding a state law that would have made their workers employees. Similar legislation has been introduced in at least 3 other states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Missouri, according to a labor and gig economy experts tracking such efforts. In West Virginia, a bill was recently enacted to law. Kathleen Anderson, a former blah, 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 said Department of Labor ruling on gig workers could give it the ability to go after companies to ensure their compliance. If the department comes out with an aggressive ruling, the courts and the U.S. Congress are likely to get involved. This could potentially be devastating to a business, but to really make this stick, you have to go through federal legislation. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union, one of the largest unions in the country, said that Uber and Lyft are already trying to muddy the waters by saying a new ruling would hurt actual independent contractors. Most gig workers are misclassified, they said. So that's an update to the story. That's the newest update I could find. To me, this is kind of scary. It may be the end of gig work as we know it. I don't know. I was a little scared when I read that article. So what do you think? Would you rather be a minimum wage food delivery person and be an employee and have some of the employee benefits but no freedoms and no choice and no flexibility? Or would you like to be forced to deliver wherever and whenever these platforms dictate? Do you like having the freedom to work when you want, accept orders that make sense to you, and have full control over your destiny? I sure do. Research. Make decisions that are right for you. If politicians are going a direction opposite of what you believe is best, speak up. If you think it's great, go ahead and, just sit back and let it happen. I'm not trying to convince you to believe the way I believe. We are all individuals. We live in a country that gives us the freedoms to make decisions on our own. I just wanted to speak my mind and give you some information so that you can make a decision that's best for you, and that's so that you are aware of what's going to be happening. It may not happen. I don't know. Like I said, you could bet that these platforms are going to put as much money and legal power against it as they possibly can. Because I think if this actually happens and we are all reclassified as employees, it will be the end to some of these gig platforms. Because they won't be able to afford it. They could afford it, but it'll cut so much into their profit that I just don't know. I just don't see how it's going to happen. So it's kind of scary to me. And I just wanted to bring it up so you can think about it and so you are aware of what's going on. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something and it got you thinking. Please put some, some comments or questions. Let's start a conversation in the comments. That would be so amazing. Like I said, I don't expect you to agree with me, but if you do, great. If you don't, that's great too. Let's start a conversation and get your voices heard. Anyways, thank you so much for clicking on this video, and I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.